Hello, everybody, and welcome to Storytelling, Philosophy, and Reception. Today we have the fabulous Flint Dibble, an archaeologist at Cardiff University. He's so much more than that, but that is
No, that's basically what I am.
that's good. Okay. Today we are discussing ancient animal bones, which I love. So thank you very much for being here with us, Flint. Welcome. Now,
Thank you.
a little bit of background there, Flint. And Flint and I have known each other for some time now because we first collaborated in 2018, 2019,
Something like that, yeah.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
When I interviewed, I think it must have been 2019. I interviewed you when you were in Athens at the Wiener Lab
Hmm.
for the uh, American Academy at Athens. Is that
The
right?
American School of Classical Studies at Athens.
There you go. Thank
It's
you.
the American Academy in Rome. That's like its
Ah,
sister school. Yeah, yeah.
okay.
But it's
All
a
right.
mouthful. The American School of Classical Studies in Athens. That's a
Yes.
lot of words. ASCSA is its abbreviation.
And it was fantastic. We had a great conversation for Greek TV. It was for Cosmete TV, so ancient Greek culture now, and that ran for 2 seasons, and that was so fun to do. And what I love about my work back then, and I still continue to do it, like just not necessarily in person in real life, is discuss cultural stuff about the ancient world. And I love the whole animal bones thing because like that puts me to things like the sacrifices in the Iliad, and every time they're eating food, where did they toss things? They gave them to their dogs to eat after? Like what happens? Flint, tell me about animal bones and what it tells us about the ancient Greek world.
Yeah, so I mean they tell you everything in many ways. I mean, you've heard the phrase you are what you eat, right? And what archaeologists do is they rummage through the trash of the past to understand who these humans are, and a bunch of the trash that we find is animal bones. Things like this drumstick which I ate a couple of years ago. That kind of stuff. And so you find these things and you want to try to piece together what they mean about ancient people. And so there's a whole lot that you can say about ancient Greeks from what they ate, what kind of society they were. They went from hunting and gathering to living in settled life well before ancient Greece. So they've already settled down. We have a sense of what animals they ate from ancient Greek texts and art. They ate sheep, goat, pig, and cow mostly, some wild animals like deer. Everybody thinks they ate chickens, but chickens didn't really come until after the Persian Wars or so, maybe a little before, but they came pretty late. When you think about like the Odyssey, if the Odyssey film would have had a chicken in it, I would have been very upset. That would have pissed me off because there's even a scene in Homer's Odyssey where he talks about Penelope with her geese and getting eggs from the geese because that's what they had. They didn't have chickens. And so, we have some of this sense from text, but we get such a richer picture from the actual remains themselves. So, for example, a really fun one, it depends on what you mean by fun, of course, is the ancient Greeks ate dogs sometimes. So I've studied a wide range of butchered dog bones from Greek sites. I've also studied buried dogs that were pets. So it wasn't like a one size fits all when you think about that scene with Argos and Odysseus coming home, and you think about dogs as pets. They weren't all pets. Some of them were sacrificed and thrown down wells, others of them were eaten. And so you get this richer picture of this relationship with animals. But to me, what I think is really fascinating is you can kind of track what was going on in ancient Greece from their diets. So, when you think about the Bronze Age and the palaces, they're living in these grand palaces. They have this kind of literary culture that's just writing down receipts for the wanaks or the ruler there. Sorry, it wasn't the wanaks at that time. It was the wanaks. What am I saying? It's the
Wanax? Yeah.
basileus that comes later.
Basileus. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So the wanaks at that time, they have complete control. And when you look at their diet, the majority of people that are eating meat are basically the really wealthy ones, right? And that's sort of the Bronze Age. You can see this by studying the human remains. You can do chemical analysis on human remains to get a sense of diet. And it's really only the wealthy men that are eating a lot of animal protein in the Bronze Age. Then when you hit the Iron Age, after this Bronze Age collapse, the time period of Homeric epic, they're not eating much animal protein at all, not even the wealthy people, right? It just sort of disappears because they're much more impoverished. We nickname this the Dark Age because it's so impoverished. Writing disappears, figural art disappears for a period of time. Those palaces disappear. So does large scale meat eating. And so what's interesting is when you read the Odyssey or the Iliad, there's so much sacrifice of animals, right? You're
So
muted.
much.
Yeah, okay. There's so much. They're eating meat all the time. They're stuffing their face with steaks and with burgers and like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But to me, I see that as food porn, right? They want to be eating meat, but they don't have meat. So they tell stories about people eating meat, right? And they
Makes
tell stories
sense.
about forbidden animals like the cattle of the sun and stuff like that. And which is a an inversion of sacrifice where they this is some stuff that I wish Christopher Nolan's movie had. I love the movie, but there was not enough meat. Where's the meat? And then I actually think this would have fit really well. This is the one thing that I really think they should have included when Odysseus's sailors killed the cattle of the sun and then they started roasting them on a barbecue. The meat, the beef on the grill started mooing at them. It started going moo. And it's like such a freaky thing. And it was cut out of there. And it's like, man, but that was like so much part of the story. So much of the Odyssey is about food. And so food is a big deal, right? And then when you get down to like classical Greece, the heyday of the city states of Athens and Sparta and Corinth and all this kind of stuff, a broader cross section of society now has access to meat, and probably largely through these large scale sacrifices where they're say, sacrificing 100 cattle at a time. Everybody in Athens is getting a steak, a free steak. And people have gone through the sacrificial calendars of Athens, and people probably got free steaks about twice a week. On average, once a week, twice a week in ancient Athens. So they're having these large scale sacrifices that are probably modeled off of Homer, but they're now adapted into this world where they have access because they've changed their economy. And so, that's what I track is I track how these economies change. So when you think about that's literature, right? We went through the literature that gives you a sense of stuff. But if you want to know what they're actually doing, well, in the Bronze Age, like I said, the animals are mostly controlled by the wealthy. We can see that, and they're more restricted where these animal remains are. But it's also about how they raise the animals. At the end of the Bronze Age, there's this collapse due to climate change. And one of my papers from a few years ago, it tracks how the animal husbandry and animal economy changes and adapts due to climate change. So they shift mostly from cattle and sheep to many more goats because goats are better adapted in an arid environment. So you see a lot more goats across the Greek world at that time. And then, you get down to the classical period, and they're changing how they raise these animals. There's this separate animal economy. This is a paper I just published a couple months ago. I have a YouTube video on it. And so it's all about how the economy changes at this time and how there's a separate economy for sacrificial feasts. So the animals are being raised in larger herds, probably communal, publicly controlled herds, and they're sometimes moving up and down between the uplands and the lowlands. So they're being raised in a more specialized manner from the animals that are consumed in houses, where they're sort of smaller herds attached to farmsteads and stuff like that. And I can look at that by doing isotope analysis on the teeth, by looking at the kind of chemical analysis in their teeth. So yeah, that's some of the kinds of questions I can answer.
So by doing the isotope analysis on the teeth, what does that tell you?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So in a sense, I drill. So your teeth is made of enamel. That's the tissue that it's made of. And when you powderize that, and then in a sense, you put it in something called a mass spectrometer. Okay, so what a mass spectrometer does is it burns it. That's the first step. It ignites it and turns it into gas, and then that gas travels along a tube and the heavier elements drop earlier than the lighter elements. So you can get the ratio of different elements or specifically different isotopes. So, for example, you can get the ratio of carbon 13 to carbon 12 or of oxygen 18 to oxygen 16. And so by looking at these ratios, you can piece out what the animal was eating and what the animal is drinking. And that then tells you how they're raising these animals. So specifically, what I track is oxygen. Oxygen tells you about the type of water that an animal or a human or a plant consumes, and that water changes seasonally. And since I can take multiple samples up a tooth, like, up a tooth, you can then track which season of the year that sample comes from. So is this a summer signature or a
Wow.
winter signature or whatnot? And then with carbon gives you a sense of the type of plants that the animal is eating. So you could think of it like
Sure,
this.
sure.
Our modern economy is run on corn or maize, right? And maize or corn is a C4 plant. That's different from all the rest of the grains we eat, which are C3 plants, like wheat and barley and whatnot. So our teeth and bones have a totally different chemical signature than our ancestors from a few hundred years ago or a few thousand years ago, because we feed this corn to the animals. We then eat the animals. We eat corn syrup. We eat corn. We have radically altered the organic chemistry of our teeth and our bones because of the economy that we use. So that's what we're tracking with this carbon, is what kinds of plants these animals are consuming. And so what I can see is, are they consuming plants that would have been in a lowland or in an upland, a different kind of environment during different seasons of the year? And that's how I can see that they're moving these animals for the sacrifices between the uplands and the lowlands, between the winter and the summer. And so that's what I'm actually tracking. Other animals, for example, they show the exact same carbon signature all year round, which that's weird because plants should be seasonal, right? They vary based on environment, but based on season as well. So if they have the exact same carbon signature all year round, well, then that suggests that they're foddering them. So they're growing plants to feed them. They're harvesting those plants at one time, and then they're feeding those same plants all year round. So they're probably penned or stalled or something like that, rather than grazing. And so you can detect these kind of signatures from these teeth and get a sense of the economy, right?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, what is the earliest time period of animal bones that you've worked with? So, I mean, past ancient Greek Bronze Age, we're talking?
Earlier than that, yeah. So I work on a project on Evia, on the island of Euboea, as it's said in English, and that's at Gurimadi, so it's near Charistos, and this site is Neolithic, so it's sort of at the end of the Neolithic period, start of the Chalcolithic or Bronze Age. So we're
Which are
talking
what dates? Yeah.
something, yeah, something like 6,000, 5,000 years ago, stuff like that. Yeah. So
Okay.
3000 BC, 4000 BC.
Have you
Um,
worked at a specific area over looking at a different time frame? So, like for instance, Evia, yes, in the Neolithic age, and comparing it to Bronze Age Evia.
well, so most of my studies are a little later. So I've worked on several Bronze Age sites. So Nicoria, for example, I excavated at Pylos. I've studied buried horses outside of Pylos, actually, in a cemetery. Actually, I guess it's closer to Kalamata, but yeah. So I've studied a number. My focus is mostly Bronze Age, so about 1500 BC, 3500 years ago,
Oh, I didn't
down
realize
through,
that. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
down to like the Roman period, let's say, so 2000 years ago. And so, yeah, I look at changes between these periods, and I try to look at how they relate to climate change and to urbanism, are kind of the two themes that I look for. How does the animal economy adapt, and how does it relate to like these rituals, like large scale sacrifice and stuff like that? Yeah.
Well, then, let's talk about Bronze Age, Iron Age, animal bones, and how it relates to the world of Homer. I think that
Yeah.
would be fun because, yeah, I mean, that's in everybody's mind these days, certainly in mine. So, from what you've studied about animal bones in the Bronze Age, especially with Pylos, uh, there was that Pylos exhibit at Getty Villa, and I met the archaeologist who wrote the books and who did
Hmm.
the whole excavation. And that was absolutely fascinating. I would love to hear, any discoveries in Pylos that you had studied, and what that told us about the world of the Odyssey, and like how does it map onto the world of the Odyssey and the Iliad, or, just that Homeric world.
Yeah, so I mean, I was actually field director when we excavated the tomb of the Griffin Warrior. I actually excavated most of the dirt from that tomb, like personally.
Oh my
But there,
gosh. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
but there were no animal bones in it. So it had no animal bones. It didn't even have any pottery in it, not a single pot. It was all just precious metals and precious gemstones and ivory, and then the person. So, like I told you, I think in our conversation on my channel, when we excavated that tomb, it had so much bronze in it that it actually preserved some of the wood around it from the coffin and some of the fabric, textile stuff, because bronze prevents the decay of organic material. But yeah, no animal remains at all. Um,
Did
so
that
I've not,
surprise you? That would
yeah,
surprise me.
I guess. I mean, it's such a wealthy burial that there aren't many really good comparisons. So it's not that surprising in that sense, because this person was so wealthy they didn't even have a pot, you know? So, like, that's how friggin' wealthy they were. They were just like, bury me in bronze and silver and gold and ivory, and that's it. So, yeah. But nearby, I studied the site of Nicoria, which is controlled by Pylos. So it's part of the kingdom of Pylos, and it's mentioned in the Linear B tablets, for example, that we have from the Palace of Nestor at Pylos. And so we know that it becomes controlled by the palace at the start of like the LH3 period, right? So that is 1500 BC, 3500 years ago, something like that. And the animals before that were heavily dominated by pigs. So there were a lot of pigs there. It seems like sort of local agricultural related animal husbandry. So they're raising these animals. Pigs are great because you can feed them trash and stuff like that. But when the palace takes over, it shifts to sheep, which is interesting because that relates really clearly to the Linear B tablets that we have. The Linear B tablets describe that the palaces, they focused on certain products that they wanted to control for their palatial economies and prestigious goods. So obviously bronze is one of them. That's a really important one to control. But in terms of agricultural products, they focused on sort of high status things. So most people are eating barley. That is the grain that's the cheapest and easiest to produce. But the palace was interested in wheat, right? So bread like we have, right? So while the Linear B tablets describe all this wheat, the archaeological record shows a lot of barley. But what they were interested in terms of animals were the oxen for plowing. So we have a list of Linear B tablets where they talk about teams of 2 oxen that they would send around the landscape to plow. So they're interested in that. And then they're interested in sheep, not for their meat, not for their milk, but for their wool. So the palace, they employed a huge textile operation. All the palaces did. We have the evidence for this at Knossos, where they had like herds of tens of thousands of sheep. At Pylos, we have Linear B tablets that describe all the people employed or actually probably enslaved to do textile production. And so it's interesting to see that when the palace takes control of this little satellite settlement, the economy shifts towards a much more sheep heavy economy so that they could extract that wool. And so we see that really clear shift. And then at the end of the Bronze Age, what we see is a shift towards cattle. And this is really interesting. So for a long time, this project was it was excavated in the 70s, and it was out of the University of Minnesota. And it was one of the first scientific archaeological projects in the Greek world. So they were really interested in animals, and they actually employed a paleontologist because they didn't have zooarchaeologists at the time. So this guy studied dinosaurs and like the transition from dinosaurs to birds. And he worked at the University of Minnesota. So he came along as sort of like a favor to his colleagues, and he studied it, and he sees all these cow bones in the Iron Age layers, and he's like, fuck, he's sitting there like in the evening reading the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then he's studying these bones during the day, and he's like, oh man, this is exactly what I'm reading about. They feasted on cows. So when I went to restudy it, that was my big research question was what's going on here, because this led to a whole hypothesis for what happened at the end of the Bronze Age called the pastoral hypothesis, where this guy started it, but then Anthony Snodgrass, who was a really prominent Greek archaeologist who just retired recently from Cambridge University, he developed this hypothesis where you see more ephemeral sites You see more ephemeral pottery. Writing disappears, art disappears. You have these cow bones at Nicoria. Maybe they become cowboys, basically. Maybe they become pastoral people and they're feasting on all this meat. The chinks were already starting to hit this hypothesis by the time I studied the material, where people were like, Nicoria is one of the last remaining links of this. So when I went to study it, I'm like, what's going on here? Did they become pastoralists? Did they become cowboys? This paleontologist described them as gauchos, for example. And so I went to restudy them, and I realized immediately, because instead of studying things bag by bag, I want to study things as a unit. So I wanted to study all the Iron Age and then all the Bronze Age so I could compare it. And I realized, wow, these bones from the Iron Age, they look totally different from those from the Bronze Age. They're as if they've been eroded by acid. And so, and there's actually all these excavation notes where people are talking about this, the excavators. They're like, the bones in the Iron Age layers are much more fragile. They're, or the bones from higher up are more fragile. And that's actually what it was. After the site becomes abandoned at the end of the Iron Age, all this rain comes down and slowly dissolves the bones in the upper layers. And so you can even see this where there's areas of the site where there's no Iron Age over the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age is near the surface, and the bones from those Bronze Age deposits were also heavily eroded, and they had a lot more cattle. Because, of course, when you have your bones being eroded, cow bones are big and robust. They survive better than smaller sheep, goat, pig bones. There are no chickens. And so that's why they seemed like cowboys. They weren't cowboys. The bones just didn't survive as well. So yeah.
Wow, that is really fun. A fun fact
Yeah.
to
Yeah, which
find.
is why I say that Homer is more like food porn. It's like, and you can see this in later fantasy. I love it when you read different fantasy novels, like J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. There's this food porn aspect to it where they're eating this great food. The hobbits eat like 12 meals a day and they have a third breakfast. You know what I mean? And so, like, there's this food porn aspect that carries down from Homer to Tolkien and not to Nolan, though.
No, unfortunately not. I was expecting color and like yummy stuff in there, um, which didn't happen.
Yeah, I
Again,
mean, I didn't expect the color. I mean, for two
no.
reasons. One, Nolan is notorious for being like, having a gritty, dark sort of feel to his films. And if you look at his other films, they're all like that. And I guess he's red-green colorblind. But then, second of all, which is a complaint I have, not about Nolan, but about the way that the ancient world and the medieval world is typically shown in films, it's very colorless. This is just today's way of showing this. And so I had no expectations for color. I was hoping for more meat and more animals. But that's not something that I need in my films. That's okay. I was hoping for it, but yeah, that's okay. It didn't ruin it for me.
Yeah, the
It did
movie.
ruin it for Emily Wilson, who was like, there was no sex and all the food looked disgusting. And it's like, yeah, but the pottery was actually pretty good. If you paid attention to the pottery, they had fantastic oinakoi for pouring the wine. They had stirrup jars, which are traditional Mycenaean and Minoan sort of vessels that they were using. The pottery was really good. The thrones were really good. The columns inside and the frescoes were really good. The armor was so-so, but I have my reasons. I'm working on a video on the archaeology of the Odyssey movie, and I'm waiting for some more screenshots to come out of it so that I can show what I saw in the theater. Because I haven't seen really many online versions of the pottery, but I was paying attention while watching. I was like, their pottery choices are really good, and their jewelry's phenomenal as well. And but their armor's not super accurate, but there's reasons for it, and I can get into it at another time. Yeah.
Yeah, the vision was definitely um, a very again, I'm not hating on the film at all, but we have an Odysseus who is faithful. And
Maybe. I think there was some implications that him and Calypso were sleeping together because she kept saying, "We had such good times together, baby." Like she said that like a couple times. And so I got the
good times can
implication.
be just deep conversation and hand holding, Flint.
Sure, but I think but that said, it was rated R, so why not include a sex scene with Calypso? I don't know. Maybe it costs too much for Matt Damon and Charlize Theron to do it, or maybe they don't like each other very much. I don't know.
I really think it's because the thrust of, of the film is such that he's supposed to be a faithful Odysseus. Like any implication of sex was him and Penelope, about to embrace, but there's a baby in the room. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was weird, but then again, I think that's Christopher Nolan. He doesn't do very much romance. He's I don't know, it's he's weird like that. And yeah. So I didn't expect a whole lot, but I did think there'd be some, and I got my reading of it was him and Calypso were getting it on, if you will. But it would have been really cool, especially because they were eating the lotus, if they had like an in bed scene eating the lotus. I feel like that could have fit and done some flashbacks like that. I feel like that would have fit pretty well, but just like the mooing of the cattle would have fit their fairy tale type thing, and maybe like the Circe pig thing, you could have done that with the cattle on the spits. That's the one that really I thought would have fit well.
a
Oh well,
sexless Circe was weird. Was quite a
yeah,
choice, since her whole thing was like, "All right, I will turn them back into men if you sleep with me," just flat out,
yeah.
just like that, and 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 what if
That
the
said,
yeah.
the Cersei scene was phenomenal.
Oh, of
I
course.
really enjoyed it.
I
Like
agree that
I think they could have done that with Calypso, and that would have been the stand-in to keep the Cersei scene as they did it. Because like that gave me chills. That was just like I almost started like screaming in the movie, being like, "Fuck yeah!" Like I almost did that.
that was incredible. That
Yeah,
was incredible. So,
yeah.
there were moments that cinematically again great. But yeah, it wasn't Homer's Odyssey, and that's how it is. And so you know, have
So
you
okay, let's.
oh,
What about the music? Were you a fan of the music? I
um
know you're into music,
I
so
am into music. Was I okay? So the soundtrack was good, and especially loved hearing the Owlus playing by my
aha.
the Owlus played by Callum Armstrong, my Owlus teacher, and he's just like the world's best Owlus player, and bagpiper out there. So that was wonderful to hear that so prominent. I didn't hear my friend uh, who was playing, Rosa Fragorapti. She played the lyre in the soundtrack, but you couldn't hear it. It was so buried. But at least while watching the movie, I didn't hear it. It wasn't prominent like that. Um, and would have loved to see Travis Scott have a lyre, have like
He
this,
had a staff that he was banging.
just like, I mean, would have been nice. Would have been nice to, if not a tortoiseshell lyre, maybe they had, more of a forminx type, more of a kithara type, even just like one of the box lyre. They're
Uh-huh.
wonderful to have
Of
as a
course.
prop, just as a prop. Like he doesn't have to be playing it. It's cool. Like maybe he just played it and now he's hanging it up again, and then he chooses to do spoken word thumping. That's fine. That's all good. But like just have that. But yeah, I would have loved to actually hear music in the Odyssey, like not as a soundtrack, but just like as in like
As part of the
people.
plot.
Yeah, just like people
Yeah.
like to hear music, do they not? Like have that. I mean, there's a banquet or a feasting going on. There's always any pub you go to, there's like music playing. So they had to have a musician, I mean, they have to. Why didn't they? I mean, playing music, not just
Yeah,
spoken
yeah.
stuff. That would be nice. And then Penelope weaving was good, but Circe weaving and Calypso weaving would have been good as well. And I know you were asking about music, but to me, women women singing, maybe to their children, women weaving, those are women activities. That would have been more of that. Yes, I know
Hmm.
Penelope, there was the Penelope weaving, but I mean as a normal part of life, not just to make a shroud for her father-in-law. Like those are the things that I miss. When I think of Greece, I think of food, I think of music. And
Yeah.
there was not that within the world of Odysseus that was going a color, lots of yummy food and music going on. Stuff like that wasn't there, and I wish it were. And um, I mean, like Circe, the first reason why the men went to her home is because they heard the voice of a woman singing.
Yeah.
And that was completely absent. Like, there was no reason why they couldn't have her um, humming, something as the men, or maybe they did they? Am I imagining it? But like,
I don't remember.
yeah, but like more prevalently, if it was there, but it was like I don't remember it, that means it wasn't prominent, and
Hmm.
it should have been like the way that the reason why they were enticed. They were like, oh, the sound of a beautiful singing, and then they go in, and she would have been weaving, um, because singing and weaving go together for women for whatever reasons back then as
I
during
think some of
today.
the timing of helps with the warp and the weft of the loom.
Yeah, and
I think there's something there with
it's
that.
a creative thing. It's a creative process. So you're
Hmm.
creating a work of art. Because my goodness, like some of these textiles from ancient times that we see and depicted in vase paintings, right? Because they don't really survive. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, you were doing some artwork there. So they're doing artwork with the weaving, and while they're singing would have been good. And that's how I imagined it when I was doing my album, the Odyssey
Hmm.
and Iliad album, because the first thought is Penelope weaving.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And Penelope weaving, I think of her fingers moving, and
Hmm.
so I think of the rhythm of that. There is a rhythm, as you're mentioning, and so there was a rhythm in my head, do 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 do. Do. So I put that in the Penelope lamenting song that I made, which
Uh-huh. Very
yeah,
cool.
and then the moments she had alone. She had very few moments alone because there's always servants around her, and in this moment where Penelope is alone and she just wants to die, she just wants to sink in, and she's speaking. So in the Odyssey part of my album, the women are speaking their words. The females, that whether they're goddesses or women,
Okay.
are speaking their words. So I don't even include narrative at all, except for book one when I sing, uh, Andre moyenne pe musa. So tell me muse, and then uh, Polytropon os malapola. I sing that in dactylic hexameter with the pitch marks, following the pitch
Huh.
marks,
Yeah, yeah.
and just with a lyre, like no other instrument, just me singing, and that's invoking the muse. And so I kept that. But then when we get into uh, book five, okay, so um, Calypso is also a weaver. She weaves. And as
Hmm.
Emily Hauser had pointed out in several lectures and talks, he had to have a sail in order to sail away from Calypso's
Yeah,
island.
of course.
And that implies that Calypso was weaving a sail as if
Hmm.
she's like, just in case, when he goes away at some point. And she's been nurturing him this whole time in the Odyssey anyway. She's been nurturing him. And yes, it says that, by the time we meet him 7 years later, he's weeping at the beach daily. Uh, but he sleeps with her every night. Um, Even though because she wants him and he doesn't want her, but he sleeps with her every night. And we don't know the power that Calypso has. It's just keeps saying that he's making her do this, but we don't know what her powers are. It's
Uh-huh.
just
Uh-huh.
we Calypso her name, the hidden one, but she doesn't have a power, whereas Circe has a powers of transformation. Uh, the closest thing we can get to is like maybe her island is hidden, but maybe that's a big maybe,
Hmm.
but no other thing. She doesn't punish him in any way. She's always weaving, and there, we know her island is beautiful. It's got forests, streams, lots of food. It talks about like food is everywhere. There's all these fruits and smells beautiful. So it's paradise, and he's unhappy because he wants to go home by the seventh year. We don't know if he was happy at any other time. But then she says, Son of Laertes, sprung from Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, must you, just like that, go home to your own native land forthwith? This is after Hermes said, you got to let him go. So she's having a heart-to-heart talk with him. And she says, yet even so, may you fare well. So she's not angry. It's, she's just like, must you go? Well, if you want, yeah, you can go. As if like she's never forced him, isn't it? Like it's like if you got to, oh my
It's
goodness.
not as if Zeus just told her to let him go.
Yeah, okay, so as if like that didn't happen. And she's like, if, however, in your heart you knew all the measure of woe it is your fate to fulfill before you come to your native land, you would remain here and keep this house with me, and you would be immortal. But she doesn't say it just out of the blue. She doesn't just say, I will make you immortal if you stay here. She says, if you knew the woes, you would stay here and be immortal. So it's, contextually, it's really interesting. It's like she's saying, I am your safe harbor. I am safe, and you would be immortal if you stay with me. But then, then he says, no, queen, because I would like to go back to my wife, even though she's mortal and you're beautiful. I want to go back to my wife. And she goes, okay. And then she bathes him. She gives him food to go and, supplies. She gives him supplies to cut down trees. She says, oh, I'll give you tools to cut down trees and make a boat. And then off you go. And then they sleep together one more time before he does this. So it's like the whole like, all right. I mean, what I'm saying
Final
is,
sex scene before breaking up.
and at this, I guess what I'm saying is, at this point, she's not forcing him anymore.
Yeah, because he's leaving. Yeah.
He's
Well,
leaving.
who knows what her power is? Maybe her power is seductive.
Yeah, I asked Mary Beard once in an interview when she was just like in a restaurant setting and she was doing a panel thing. And she's like, ask me any questions. And then I said, I have a question. And she's like, yes, Bettina. And I said, what was the power of Calypso to keep Odysseus? Because it never says anything. And she goes, oh, sex.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's, so there may be like some sort of seductive thing that she had going on, but it's implied. It's not anything that we know, right?
Yeah.
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 And I sang that song in ancient Greek in dactylic hexameter with just the lyre for that one.
Very cool. Very
Whereas
cool.
like when I do Helen of Sparta, I did aulos, drum, finger cymbal, lyre, and did I do lute with that one? I feel like I did.
All at once? This seems like too much. How many hands do you have?
No,
You're like juggling your instruments.
I had to layer it all.
Yeah, of
In a
course, yeah.
perfect world, I would have an ensemble, that I could have at my beck and call, and I'd go, "Ooh, I have this song idea. Let's do this," and have them do it. And I'm slowly working on that, like in my imaginary spare time. But until that point happens, it's me layering it on tracks, and I do it really quickly. When I do these songs, it feels live to me because I do it within
Okay.
48 hours. When an idea happens, I go, "Wow." And I
Bam.
sit down and I start recording. And remember that I do have a household, so people are coming and going. There's lots of noise. So I have to do this. I still have to do this within the times that they're not walking around. And
Yeah.
and so I somehow still record within like 48 hours, like at the most 3 days. I record it all while I have this feverish vision. And
While the
then,
muse strikes.
well, yeah, while the muse strikes, so I go, I have this idea, and this is how it's going to be, and these are the words that I choose, and I chose the one where Helen of Sparta is giving her prophecy to Telemachus, because he's asking like
Hmm.
everyone, "Where's my dad? Where's my dad?" And she's like, "Oh, let me tell you where your dad is, as the gods told me when I saw these birds
Hmm.
doing this weird thing." And then she says it. She's powerful. She's amazing, and I wanted that to come across. Just like, Athena. I started the whole album with the Iliad 1.1
Yeah.
and ended it with Odyssey 24 because I just wanted to encompass it. And
You
then,
did a great job with that. You have like
thank
what, five
you.
songs about the Iliad and then the rest of the Odyssey, seven of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or
And
or
it
the
goes
other
through it
way.
exactly in order. Yeah.
Yep. And I was doing it not necessarily in order, but in order of books, but in an order that made sense to me narratively.
Hmm.
But they're all there, and they're all taken straight from the books, the words. And yeah, and most of them, only three songs out of the 12 are not dactylic hexameter. All the other ones are, including Athena telling everybody to cease at the end. So that was my vision of it all, and that was just volume one. I actually have volume two songs, but I was like, okay, I
Aha.
have to stop. I just, I can keep compiling my songs, but it's like, no, 12, that's good. Package that, and then the Nausicaa and Andromache songs, that's for like volume two, and
Okay.
other Helen and Penelope songs, because they talk a lot in the Iliad and the Odyssey,
Of
actually.
course. Yeah.
Like they get to have that in volume two, so.
Cool. Very, very cool. I'm
Which
I'm
ones did you
excited.
like? Which ones did you like, Flint?
Yeah, I like that Helen of the Sparta one. I like the instrumentation and stuff like that. I really like the Siren's Call. I thought the way that I mean, as you told me, you're mimicking the waves and the wind and stuff like that. I thought that that worked really, really well,
Yeah,
to do
it was
that.
about that, the waves and the wind, and um, for me as a somebody who's like always swimming in the water, it's like that is the first thing that comes to me, the pounding of the waves, the melody of the winds, and that's got to be in there when they're calling out to the sailors. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I like how you get this inspiration from these different sources like Penelope and the rhythm of weaving and this kind of stuff. I think there's a cool backstory that goes beyond just the Iliad and the Odyssey, if you see what I mean. You're adapting this kind of authentic material with really cool replicas, but at the same time there's more imagination to it than even that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think as a scholar, like that's what's different about how I approach ancient music in any culture is I will first really get to know the culture itself at the time that I'm talking about, and then see myself walking around in that space and feel, well, how would I have felt as this, as close as I could possibly, and then speak and sing through her voice. And I spoke in female voices mostly because um, I that's I'm a female, so for me, like that's how I can express myself through their
Hmm.
voice. I did one Iliad song through the words of Briseis, Briseis's father. Uh, so I think that's it. I think that's the only male. And then, oh, no, no, hang on. Achilles, Patroclus, and Briseis. That song, Achilles and Patroclus are both singing, and then Thetis Achilles. There's Achilles also singing. Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
So there are more male voices in the Iliad one, whereas Odyssey, it's all women's voices except for the invocation of the muse part.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. The Iliad is the Odyssey has more feminine characters, and they have much more of a part. Not the movie, but the actual epic poem itself. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
Well, Flint, thank you so much. I gotta run soon, because I will
yeah.
be then
Next
interviewing.
time
Yeah,
you got to have some animals. Argos in volume two. Maybe some of the pigs or the you could do the cattle mooing on the cattle of the sun, thing.
the mooing will be done with the sound of the owls. That's the
Yeah,
mooing,
perfect.
the mooing part.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. I like it. You're giving me great ideas, Flint.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being here
Yeah,
with
thank you,
us.
Bettina. It was great to come. Yeah.
We gotta just stay connected, and and for now, bye for now.
Bye for now. Thank you all. Cool.